For over a century, the Quadrifoglio has been Alfa Romeo's symbol of pure racing victory. From the legendary 1923 Targa Florio to dominating touring car competitions, whenever Alfa wanted to build the fastest, most ferocious machine, it wore the clover. And in 2016, the Giulia Quadrifoglio didn't just join that legacy, it shattered expectations, setting a Nürburgring production sedan record that stood as the fastest four-door on the planet. Quadrifoglio literally means four-leaf clover, traditionally regarded as a rare symbol of luck, but on an Alfa, it means something else entirely: unrelenting performance. At the heart of these beasts beats a 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6 that traces its DNA straight to Ferrari, 510 horsepower, 443 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in just 3.8 seconds. Today, we're tearing into the engine that made it all possible. Let's go! Love Alfa Romeo? Then subscribe to Alfista, where you'll find deep dives, driving, history, and pure Italian passion every week. Hit subscribe, join the family, and let's keep the passion alive. Here we are with the 690T. That is the official name of this engine. This is a twin-turbocharged Ferrari-derived 2.9-liter V6 with a 90-degree bank angle. The US variant of this engine produces 505 horsepower at 6,500 RPM. In other markets, it can produce up to 510 horsepower. The limited edition Giulia GTA and GTA-M, which only 500 were made, also uses this engine. In those vehicles, the horsepower is increased to 540, which is a testament of the potential that this engine has. In terms of torque, there's plenty of it. 443 foot-pounds of torque to be exact. That's equal to 600 Newton meters. And all of that torque is available to you as soon as 2,500 RPM all the way up to 5,500 RPM. The top speed on this car is 191 miles per hour or 307 kilometers per hour. It can achieve 0 to 60 in just 3.8 seconds. The displacement on this engine is 2,891 cubic centimeters. It has an 86.5 millimeter bore by an 82 millimeter stroke. The compression ratio on this is 9.3 to 1. This is built on the Georgia platform and it's one of the best 6-cylinder engines out there. It has two IHI turbochargers, and these are single scroll turbos. Each turbocharger produces about 20 psi of boost pressure, which is equivalent to about 1.4 bars. Each turbocharger on this engine has its own air-to-liquid intercooler. When this engine first came out, it only had direct injection, but starting in 2020, Alfa Romeo added port injection as well. So there's 2 fuel injectors per cylinder with a total of 12 fuel injectors. This is an all-aluminum engine with pressed-in steel cylinder liners, which is only found in high-performance engines. I think it's worth spending a little extra time learning more about these cylinder liners. These are very thin, measuring only 2.5 millimeters at their thinnest point. These are also installed wet. Wet liners refers to the outer surface of the steel liners being directly exposed and cooled by the engine's coolant circulating in the aluminum block. This provides superior cooling when compared to dry steel liners, which is specifically important in a high-output engine such as the 690T. The method of using pressed-in steel liners is more costly, which is probably why many modern high-performance engines use plasma-sprayed bores, consisting of low-carbon steel or similar coatings directly on the aluminum, not separate liners. That is common in engines such as Mercedes-AMG, BMW S58, some Porsches, and even the Nissan's GTR VR38, which uses a plasma-sprayed low-carbon steel coating. While these steel liners are slightly heavier when compared to the plasma spray liners, they do provide better long-term reliability, since steel liners handle sustained high cylinder pressures better without risking coating delamination, which can occur in plasma sprayed bores under certain conditions. Another key advantage of pressed-in steel liners over linerless plasma sprayed or nickel coated bores is that they are serviceable. These steel liners also receive a nickel silicon carbide coating, which is typical of Ferrari engines. This nickel silicon carbide coating, often referred to as Nicosil or NSC, is a high-performance electrodeposited composite plating. It consists of a nickel matrix which is embedded with tiny silicon carbide particles. Silicon carbide is a hard chemical compound made of silicon and carbon. It forms strong covalent bonds similar to diamond, making it one of the hardest materials known. This creates an ultra-hard, low-friction wear surface. Moreover, NSC has excellent heat dissipation and oil retention qualities. However, one of the weaknesses that NSC has is dirt. The dirt particles get between the silicon carbide and wear out the nickel. The Valvetrain is chain-driven and it has nitrided steel double overhead cams. It also has 4 valves per cylinder with a total of 24 valves. Timing is controlled by 2 chains, as we can see right here, 1 per bank. This engine also has variable valve timing for both the intake and the exhausts. So I mentioned that the cams are made of nitrided steel. So let's learn about what nitriding is. Nitriding is a heat treating process that diffuses nitrogen into the surface of a metal to create an extremely hard surface. And right here we're looking at a picture of a computerized nitriding furnace. This is a typical machine that would be used in the nitriding process. So what happens is that the cams are heated in a nitrogen-rich atmosphere, usually ammonia gas, at about 500 to 570 degrees Celsius. The nitrogen atoms react with the steel and diffuse into the steel surface, like gas soaking into a sponge. This chemical reaction forms a very thin but extremely hard iron nitride compound layer. And this picture is looking at a nitrided steel under a microscope. And this is what that layer looks like right here, this top white thing right here. And this layer is usually between 0.2 and 0.6 millimeters deep. And to make things more exciting, Alfa also decided to throw in a crankshaft that is also made of nitrided steel. The crankshaft bearings that we see here and here have an aluminum base with a layer of silver, and finally a layer of bismuth. Bismuth has replaced lead, which has been banned due to environmental and toxicity reasons. It is a soft metal that traps the bead to prevent scoring, and it is also stable at the oil temperature seen in the bearing clearance of approximately 180 degrees Celsius, though not as quite as heat resistant as the old lead overlays, which could endure up to 300 degrees Celsius. This engine has 3 rod journals that we can see here, and they are spaced 120 degrees apart. Notice that each pair of cylinders shares a single rod journal. The offset between the 2 connecting rods on each shared journal is 30 degrees. When one of the 2 pistons starts to move in the cylinder from top dead center to bottom dead center, the other is completing its travel in the opposite bank, reaching its top dead center. This also has an aluminum underblock. The pistons in this engine are also pretty unique because these are tungsten disulfide coated. Let's learn about what that is. Tungsten disulfide comes from the rare mineral tungstenite. And tungsten disulfide creates a super slippery surface. In this video, we can see 2 bowl screws. The one on the right has received a tungsten disulfide application, while the one on the left has not. Let's play the video to see who wins the race. The tungsten disulfide coated bowl screw easily wins. What this ultimately means is that the pistons in the 690T have a super slippery, ultra durable, dry lubricant permanently applied to their skirts or sides, which results in low friction durability. The piston crowns that we see here are machined both to create space for the valves, as we can see right here, and to create an off-center pocket that promotes the turbulence needed for the combustion starting from the injection point. The redline in this engine happens at 6,500 RPM, but it has a maximum engine speed of 7,400 RPM. This engine weighs in at 480.6 pounds, which is equivalent to 218 kilograms. As you can see, the layout in this engine is longitudinal, and that's one of the things that helps this car achieve perfect weight distribution, 50% in the front and 50% in the rear. The ignition coils in this engine are produced by the Italian company Eldor. It also has NGK spark plugs. Let's talk about the firing order in this engine. All right, so here we have the pistons. All right, so the firing order goes from 1 to 6, and then from 6 to 3, from 3 to 4, and from 4 to 2, and then lastly from 2 to 5. And that's what I've tried to represent here with these arrows. You see this little circle right here, which represents the starting piston. And then if you follow the arrows, you're going to see where it ends in number 5. This engine has a 90-degree and 150-degree firing intervals for that uneven Ferrari-like rumble. The connecting rods are made of forged steel. Let us learn why forged steel is better than cast steel. The steel forging process involves heat and compressive forces that refines the internal grain structure of the steel. This results in superior strength, toughness, ductility, and fatigue resistance compared to cast or machined steel. In the end, the connecting rods will not only be stronger, but they will also take a lot more abuse. The pistons are made of a cast aluminum alloy with a graphite coating. Despite graphite coating not being as luxurious as the tungsten disulfide coating, it is still excellent in reducing friction between the piston and the cylinder wall, while minimizing wear and scuffing, which result in a quieter operation. Another fascinating fact about this engine is that it uses studs to secure the backplate as well as the cylinder heads. Studs are far superior to bolts and are only found in high-performance engines. The fact that this engine has a 90-degree bank angle, which is uncommon for a V6 engine, it also means that this engine has a lower center of gravity when compared to the more prevalent 60 degrees found in most V6 engines. As is the case in most modern automotive engines, the rotation of this engine is clockwise as you're looking at it from the front. This engine has two engine cooling systems. One is a high temperature and the other one is low temperature. The high temperature system is used to cool the coolant that is used to cool the engine. The expansion tank for the high temperature cooling system is the one right here. Now, the low temperature cooling system is used to cool down the air that is circulating in the intercoolers. And the expansion tank for that system is this one over here. You'll notice that this car has two additional small radiators here, one on the left and one on the right. And these belong to the high temperature and low temperature cooling systems. The one on the right is part of the high temperature cooling system, while the one on the left is part of the low temperature cooling system. And the way cooling occurs in these radiators is not via a fan, instead by the dynamic air that is produced as the car is in motion. Let's go ahead and undress her a little bit so we can take a closer look. All right, now let's talk about how air flows into the engine. So as you're driving, air is going to be collected through the front grille here, and it's going to go into this manifold here and then into your engine filter. The engine filter is sitting right in here. Once the air is filtered, it goes into this turbocharger inlet pipes. Since we have two turbochargers, we have two inlet pipes. Unfortunately, I can't show you the turbochargers from the top view here, but once the air goes into the turbocharger, it gets compressed and it comes out as very hot air. So that air then goes into the corresponding intercooler, which then cools down the air. And that right there is the intercooler. We have one there on the left and we have another one right down there. And then that air comes out of each intercooler and goes into the engine through these pipes right here. Here is a holistic view of the airflow in this engine. So we can see here the air comes through these passages here and it gets filtered right here, and then it comes out into this inlet pipe. It goes into the turbocharger. This is why I couldn't show it to you in the live video because this is way down there. The air comes out as hot compressed air and goes into the intercooler where it gets cooled down and it goes into the engine through the charge pipes. We also see here how air can be recirculated through the blow-off valve into the inlet pipe for the turbocharger. Next, I want to give you guys a quick rundown of the different components on this engine here. Obviously, we're not going to go into detail on everything that's on here. Number one, we don't need to make this video longer than it needs to be. And number two, I'm not going to pretend that I know everything that's on here, but I'll give you guys as much information as I can in the allotted time. So let's begin with the basics. Let's start with this expansion tank right here. So this tank is used by the coolant that is used to cool the engine itself, okay? And then we have another one right here. Okay, this expansion tank is used by the two intercoolers. So yeah, that's the expansion tank for the low temperature cooling system, and that's the one for the high temperature cooling system. This right here is our oil cap right here. So basically that's where we put the fresh oil into. And right next to it is the dipstick. Okay, so this car actually does have a dipstick, unlike the 2-liter engine, which does not have a dipstick. This red thing right here is for your battery. So this is remote battery charging right here. So you have the positive right here, and then you have the ground right here. Coming over here on the right hand side We have the windshield washer slash headlight washer reservoir right here. Okay. This car does have washers for the headlights, which are located right here. And right next to that, we have the brake fluid reservoir right there. This right here is the oil filter. And right behind that, we have this thing right here, which is the oil pressure sensor right there. You have the right bank and the left bank. You have to think about it as if you were sitting in the car, okay? So if you're sitting in the car, that right there is gonna be the left bank, and this right here is gonna be the right bank. And that big bright thing back there is one of the ECUs. That's right, this engine has two ECUs, this one right here, and you have another one right here. You can probably see it right down there. The ECU used in this engine is the Bosch MED 17.3.5. As many of you guys know, the ECU is basically the brains of the computer, and that's just the common name. In the Alfa Romeo world, these are known as ECMs, or engine control modules, instead of ECU, the engine control units. But just for the sake of simplicity, we're going to be referring to them as ECUs in this video. So the ECU that you see here on the left, well, you can barely see it. This is known as the master ECU, and this one controls the right bank. While this one over here is known as the slave, and this one controls the left bank. These ECU communicate with one another via a private CAN-C network, and that is known as a controller area network chassis. It has speeds of up to 500 kilobits per second, and it is the fastest of all three networks on this car. The other networks are known as CAN-B and CAN-IHS. You're going to notice here that on the right bank there is a hose right here, and if you follow that hose, there is a T right here in the middle, and this breaks into two directions. The other one goes all the way over here to the left bank, and this is what collects oil vapors, and those oil vapors go into the PCV valve right here. Those vapors exit the PCV valve and they get fed into the left hand side turbocharger. In other words, they are burned inside of the left bank. The blow-off valves are located right here, right next to the intercoolers. You can see right here, there's one right there, and there's another one right over here. So these are controlled by the ECU, so whenever these opens, it recirculates the air back into the turbo inlet. So there is no whoosh sound with this turbocharged engine. And as I mentioned earlier, the compressed air coming from the turbos goes into the engine through this pipe right here, and this one right here. And here you have the throttle bodies, one for each bank. The throttle bodies are controlled by these Bosch units. This hose that you see back here is what comes from the fuel tank in the back of the car. That's what provides the fuel for the engine. And if you follow this hose, this goes down into here. It's kind of difficult to see down there, but basically there is a T right down there, and that splits into both banks. So the fuel goes into this high pressure fuel pump on the right bank, as well as the high pressure fuel pump on the left bank. You can see how fuel comes out of the fuel pump into the rail here that feeds the fuel injectors. And this is a pressure sensor that's checking that fuel pressure in this rail. Right over here, we can see one of the coils. Obviously, we have 3 coils here on this left bank. Same thing here on the right bank. Here we have one of the coils, and the other 2 are kind of hidden behind this inlet pipe. This right here is a pressure temperature sensor. You also have one right here, so basically one for each bank. These pressure and temperature sensors allow the ECUs to calculate the air mass entering the engine. Note that there is no mass airflow sensor in this engine. And there is an inlet right down here which lets in coolant to cool the engine. The hot coolant comes out on the right side here. There are a total of 4 radiators here in the front, in addition to the 2 smaller radiators that we talked about earlier, which are seated on each side of the car. One of the clever things that have been done to this engine is that the intercoolers have been placed directly behind of the radiators. So air goes through here and then goes through different radiators, and right there you have the 2 intercoolers. You got one right there and one right here. So that is providing even more cooling to assist the cooling of the compressed air that's coming from the turbos. As you're going to learn later in this video, this engine is essentially 2 3-cylinder engines married at the crankshaft, hence the need for 2 ECUs. And one of the lesser known features of this engine is something called mechanical cylinder deactivation. And what that does is that it allows the engine to run on only 3 cylinders. So it goes from this to this. And what we're seeing here is what happens during cylinder deactivation. The cylinders in the right bank are deactivated. In other words, there is no longer any combustion happening in the right bank. and all the power comes from the 3 cylinders running on the left bank. Before deactivating the right bank cylinders, the master ECU implements a progressive unbalancing of the engine torque towards the left bank. This is done so that you as the driver don't perceive a sharp cut in torque delivery. And the way it accomplishes this is very clever. The master ECU progressively closes the throttle of the right bank while progressively opening the throttle of the left bank via the slave ECU. So here we have a representation of the left bank and the right bank. And this would be our starting point right here, where we can see the throttle on both banks equally open. As cylinder deactivation kicks in, then the throttle on the right bank begins to close. As it closes on the right bank, it opens by the same amount on the left bank. In this particular example, we see both throttles open at 50%. As the throttle on the right bank is reduced by 20%, it increases by that amount in the left bank. Then it goes from 30 to 10 in the right bank, which corresponds to 90% in the left bank. And finally, the throttle is completely shut in the right bank, while completely open in the left bank. This means that at the start, each throttle is equally open, and by the end, the right one is fully closed, while the left one is fully opened. All of the following must be true for cylinder deactivation to engage. The coolant temperature must be between 50 and 110 degrees Celsius. The gear engaged must be 3rd to 6th. Revs should be no more than 3,500. The car speed should be between 25 and 125 km per hour. Check engine light must be off. Once active, cylinder deactivation remains active for approximately 100 seconds. This is done to prevent the catalytic converter's temperature from dropping below the limit of its proper operation. The ECU then checks again to see if conditions are still true, and if so, deactivates once again. It should be noted that cylinder deactivation may be interrupted if you as a driver press the gas pedal, requiring more performance. Cylinder deactivation does not happen instantly. It follows the order of ignition. For the cylinder that has to fire at that moment, both injection and ignition are deactivated, and the intake and exhaust valves are closed. That means that the firing order goes from 1, 6, 3, 4, 2, 5 to the following: 6, 4, 5. Gianluca Pivetti, whom we'll learn more about later, notes that the frequency of the vibration doesn't change and that it remains at 1.5 when cylinder deactivation kicks in, and that's why the driver does not notice the difference. This cylinder deactivation system is not only complex but also expensive. So why did Alfa Romeo choose to go with this system in this high-performance engine? Apparently they did so to increase highway fuel efficiency. Yes, I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. But if you're one of those who cares about your MPGs, Mr. Pivetti knows that this translates to an approximate 7% fuel savings. If on the other hand you could care less about MPGs, then you will need to run this engine in race mode, since that is the only mode in which this feature is disabled.
Ferrari, which of course is part of the same company as Alfa Romeo, is very keen to point out that this is not the engine they use in the California with 2 cylinders removed. They say it's a complete coincidence that both engines have the same bore stroke and V-angle. They're adamant that this is all Alfa Romeo's own work. So, there we are. It is then.
The official press release from Stellantis back in 2015 noted that this engine was a Ferrari-derived 6-cylinder engine. The 690T was built by Ferrari and Alfa Romeo engineers, headed by ex-Ferrari engineer Gianluca Pivetti. Gianluca was the head of Ferrari's F154 V8 program, and he was recruited by Sergio Marchionne himself to join Alfa Romeo. Gianluca was joined by Roberto Fideli, a former technical director at Ferrari. He oversaw the development of iconic models such as La Ferrari, the F12 Berlinetta, 458 Italia, 458 Speciale, and the Ferrari California. Philippe Krief was also part of this team. He's widely regarded as the father of the Giorgio platform. Can you see why many people argue that the 690T is just a Ferrari F154 engine with 2 cylinders removed? These people point to the fact that both engines have identical cylinder dimensions, and that the 690T has the same V angle as the F154. Let's find out what Mr. Pivetti has to say about this. After all, Gianluca is the brains behind both the F154 and the 690T engines. When asked about this during an interview, he goes on to say, actually, the differences are there, starting with the crankshaft, which on the V8 has cranks arranged at 90 degrees, while here, referring to the 690T, they are at 120 degrees, so we couldn't just saw off a piece of it. It's clear that having been an active part of the team that designed the Ferrari V8, when I came here, I didn't forget my whole past. The starting specifications were shared with Ferrari to take advantage of past experiences and shorten the development costs and times.
Sono due 3 cilindri indipendenti, ognuno con la propria centralina, ognuno col proprio collettore di scarico.
Gianluca emphasizes that while the 690T shares DNA with the Ferrari F154, it is an entirely new engine. Gianluca notes that it is an atypical engine, calling it not a real 6-cylinder. He says that they are two 3-cylinder engines, each having their own ECU, and they have been fused into a 90-degree layout, sharing a single crankshaft, but firing independently per bank. To be clear, the 690T engine found in the Giulia and Stelvio Quadrifoglio is not the same engine as the Ferrari F154 with 2 cylinders removed. They do, however, share similar DNA. While the core geometry of each cylinder is 100% shared with the Ferrari F154 family, 86.5mm bore and 82mm stroke, and having the same V angle, the 690T's block casting, crankshaft, oiling system, turbo plumbing, and cylinder deactivation hardware are all unique to Alfa Romeo. Moreover, the 690T was built at Alfa's Termoli plant, not at Ferrari's Maranello plant, where the F154 was built. That identical cylinder dimension is why the 690T feels so Ferrari-like. It's breathing through essentially the same lungs as the Maranello's twin-turbo V8. Mr. Pivetti knows that this engine was completed in just 2 years. Work began in May of 2013 with a group of 10 Ferrari and Alfa Romeo engineers, and by 2015 the engine was ready for production. The 690T doesn't work alone. It's paired with a Hitachi carbon fiber driveshaft that weighs in at approximately 15 pounds. Cutting weight and delivering instant response. A lightning fast ZF 8-speed automatic transmission that snaps shifts in just 150 milliseconds, as fast as the blink of an eye. 2024 models received a mechanical limited slip differential, which replaced the electronic torque vectoring differential found in previous models. Together, they turn 510 horsepower into pure, balanced acceleration.
That was so good! Yeah. Like, you let it slide and it went perfectly.
It just sits on it.
It sits, it went perfectly for the wow!
This is the story of a legend that still beats strong today. It began in 1923 when Alfa driver Ugo Sivocci, fed up with second place, painted a 4-leaf clover on his race car, the Targa Florio RL, a defiant act of hope, and that day, victory came. The Targa Florio crown was Alfa's. Tragedy struck soon after. Sivocci died in a test crash without his clover on the car that day. In his honor, Alfa forever sealed the Quadrifoglio in legend, the 4-leaf clover framed in a white triangle. One corner eternally empty, a silent tribute to the man who dared to believe. Now, that same clover roars on the Giulia and Stelvio Quadrifoglio and Alfa Romeo racing vehicles, a living testament that true passion never dies.